Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow. It's Wednesday night. We're getting together for a bit of a chat again for about motor racing as the theme music plays again. I would love StreamYard to take care of that because it just loops automatically whether you want it to or not. But anyways, welcome to the program. Brought to you by In Pit Lane. Once again, a very hectic. These early nights, so I still can't get used to them. I'm still way out of kilter at the moment. But anyway, we're here, so sorry we're a little bit late. But yes, what have we got to talk about tonight? Well, we've got Formula One and we've got supercars. We've got all sorts of things. And the people who shall be talking about that with me are Peter Johnson, Mark Jones, and Richard Outram. G'day, guys. How are we?
All right. Yeah.
Hi.
Loving life.
Well, that's good. Somebody's loving life at the moment, I assume, was a guy called Daniel Ricciardo. I did all of did the artwork and everything for tonight's tonight's get together, and put it all late, about 12:30 last night or this morning, and got it all there, and was just about to say, okay, that's it, I can pack up now and go to bed, and suddenly I get a press release from. A couple of press releases, one from AlphaTauri and one from Red Bull, which said, basically, De Vries out, Ricciardo in. So we spoke about this last week, and I think we were in furious agreement that this wasn't going to happen, but it obviously did. Yeah. Pete, what was your take on it?
I think I can understand why they've only officially loaned Daniel to AlphaTauri, Red Bull, and I think I can understand why they've done it mid-season, because it's probably awkward to get one of their young drivers straight in midway through a season. So it's probably logical to put Daniel in, but it would seem a bit circuitous for Daniel, circuitous route for Daniel to go, and also it's kind of like replacing old for old in terms of you've got Yuki Tsunoda there who's older, and then now Daniel. I don't know if it has implications for Sergio, because when Sergio is qualifying at a lowly spot, he's often coming back up into the points. And I think that works a little bit in his favour, but it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case. I think that's one of the reasons that they've obviously done it. I mean, there's a few reasons that it works for AlphaTauri as well, and for Red Bull. I mean, it gets Dan back in the game again, and I mean, for his marketing reasons, as much as any. I mean, that helps. Also, the feedback that he can give the teams as well. He always had a reputation at all of the teams he's been in, including McLaren last year, where the team said, "Look, he gives very good feedback in any testing," and that counted for a lot in terms of something that Renault said that when he left there, that was something they missed. They said we got really good feedback from Ricciardo. So, what do you think, Mark? Do you think this is a good move, and what does it mean for the Red Bull Junior program when you got Liam Lawson running around doing absolutely stellar job in Super Formula in Japan? And AlphaTauri was always supposedly the junior team for Red Bull and the next step on the ladder, sort of the audition team.
Yeah, well, I think Peter raised an interesting point that it's possibly slightly difficult to pluck Liam out of his Super Formula duties. Mind you, I mean, for a Formula One slot, I imagine you'd drop everything. But I think the decision was actually made fairly easy for Red Bull and AlphaTauri when they had when at the Pirelli tyre test that was held recently, according to either just before or just after the BGP. Ricciardo was out there putting times good enough to be on the front row of the grid. I think that's That's
And he was doing it on the new tyres, which are the new ones that they're planning for next year, which will come on. Supposedly have been designed to work without tyre warmers, and that's another story because the teams have jacked up against that. They're now particularly Horner, and it's one of the few things I think Toto Wolff and Christian Horner seem to agree on at the moment, and certainly Ferrari agree. None of them are keen on the fact that they're not going to be able to use the tyre warmers, but Pirelli have designed this tyre specifically to come up to temperature, faster and get on pace quicker. And it's the first time out, and Daniel's got within, I think it was 0.7 seconds of Max's pole time after not having sat in a real car all year. So so he certainly hasn't lost it.
Yeah, I think just that those numbers on its own make the decision quite easy. I mean, why have we got this guy sitting on the sidelines doing nothing when he could be out getting podiums? So
yeah, and he's going to get. It's certainly going to put pressure on. It's got to put pressure on Sergio because the one thing that, as Pete said, I mean, he is coming back. It's not as if he's finishing badly, but they're just saying, look, he really, for whatever reason, his qualifying has just dropped out of the sky, and he's got to make these fabulous drives, and it's very impressive that that he is coming through the field and getting back into these strong positions. But as Christian Horner has been saying, it's like we'd actually prefer him to be up the front and not have to go through and make these great drives to recover. We'd like him to basically be in a position sort of to be challenging Max and basically be his rear gunner as well.
Did you get an invite to the barbecue?
I missed out on mine, but Lando got an invite to the barbecue.
Did you read about that? Oh.
Yes, that was Christian Horner had a. Well, it's one of those things. It's like a traditional thing that they have. It's a bit like the. It's a bit like the cricket match. They always have the traditional.
Gil McLaughlin, the AFL, he invites all the AFL coaches from each of the clubs to a barbecue at a particular time during the season. So Christian did the same over at Silverstone the last weekend. And you just mentioned about Christian, sensing Christian that. And I thought, did you go, did you? Because I thought he must have been talking about with you when you went to the barbecue. I thought I missed out. Did you get an invite?
No. I mean, unfortunately, my invitation got lost in the mail as well. But I think that apparently there were lots of drivers there. Now the story going around. About half the team drivers were there. I'm not sure whether Lewis turned up, perhaps because it probably wasn't a vegan. They weren't catering for vegans. But
was Nick de Vries invited? I mean, that's probably the important question.
Yeah, well, that would be.
No, everyone was invited in the F1 paddock to a certain extent, Mark.
So the Breeze missed out, eh?
Yeah, well, he would now. So what does this mean? That's the thing. I mean, what does this mean for Nick de Vries? Because now he came with sort of like a very good reputation. Mercedes were very impressed, and with what he did in his sort of stand-in appearances with Williams. They were very impressed, and he did very well in Formula E previously, although now how much that counts, I'm not really sure, but he did very, he has...
It hurts like a mother... Oh, anyway, yeah, that's what... have you seen the caption? Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Like mother,
I'm just wondering, like, do you think there is now a chance? Because the other driver that was under pressure and openly under pressure, of course, is Logan Sargent at Williams. And now this would be like an opportunity for, particularly Mercedes to say to Williams, hey, listen, you missed out on him. You had the opportunity and you missed out on him like at the end of last year. Here's your opportunity to grab him again, because the great white hope from the good old USA hasn't really set the world on fire himself yet.
Yeah. And particularly with Williams doing so well, Alex Albon in the Williams doing so well in Silverstone and I think in Austria as well. So, yeah, I think...
Well, in the Williams particular case, he is in a situation like Oscar Piastri was. He was only getting the upgrade second race after. So to Sargent's, so Oscar was like what he's been getting the upgrades of a race after what Lando has. So you've got to sort of take it race by race, one back for Logan Sargent. So I haven't been studying him as much, but yeah, you've got to take that into consideration too.
But I think.
we might.
Sorry.
Well, we'll just say hello to some of the people online. Remember, if you're watching online, you want to have your say, make your comment, or just say hi, like Mad Cow Mark is saying. We've also got Boxes joining us as well, and we've got Travis, who I don't know. You'll have to explain that one to
Travis
me.
Old. Sorry, I think I know what it is.
Yep.
Travis Old is in line to be the new GP chief executive.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, another. It's interesting. I mean, because you've got like Andrew. Andrew is leaving the Grand Prix. Andrew Westacott leaving the Australian Grand Prix Corporation, and now it's the story is that Paul Little, who is on the board, the chairman of the board, is also going to be leaving. So it'll be a new broom in there, and they're talking about Travis Old, who was one of the main contenders for Gillan McLaughlin's gig at the AFL, and missed out on it. So he might be of the opinion now that, okay, well, I went for the... he can either sort of hang around and wait his turn for the next one, or he might just turn around and go, okay, I've got this other offer. I might take it.
Yeah, it's
so
going to be a long time between drinks when it comes to
yeah.
AFL commissioner. The last two, obviously, we got Demetrio and Gil McLaughlin, extremely long tenures. So he could be retirement could be closer for Travis Old before somebody else could.
Yeah, so he would probably be a good pick in the same way that sort of what Eugene Arocca has done for Motorsport Australia with all of those contacts, because there's no doubt about it. I mean, we know that if it's AFL, it is royalty, and in terms of getting access, this is what Eugene was saying when we spoke to him the first time. He said I can pick up the phone and just talk to the Premier. I could just pick up the phone, and because we have all of these connections because of the football. I mean, we know each other, and I know all of the people who need to be spoken to in terms of government, and also how what sort of buttons you've got to push and what sort of deals have got to be done. So, and he did that, and it ended up getting a lot more sort of government support for the sport than we've ever seen before. So, probably for Travis to take over the Grand Prix would be a pretty smooth transition, I think. But anyway, and there, missing Townsville, all the way direct from Townsville is Dave Stillwell, and nice and warm up there, was it, Dave?
Very much so. Are my levels coming through okay?
You are coming through, looking very atmospheric tonight. Very
yes, looked like Bela Lugosi actually.
No, I had a fantastic 4.5 days in Townsville. The hashtag for Townsville is Townsville Shines, and what a rotten time of year to go and visit tropical North Queensland. I mean, I don't know why anyone from the southern states would want to go somewhere where it's 26 degrees and sun shining for 14 hours a day. I can't think of a reason why anyone would want to do it.
Hey, it almost got to 13 on Saturday.
The only thing would be if there's a tropical cyclone going through at that particular time. I mean, it was Allison.
Yeah, not this time of year.
That might discourage a few. That's the only one I can think of.
Well, it's actually just started raining here.
It was wet and miserable at the island. You've got no idea.
Well, I do have an idea, because that's why I didn't go down there. I didn't go, like I was saying before we got on there, I was heading down the island to see you and catch up with a few people and with the supercars down there, and at about 7 a.m. I opened the door, because I couldn't hear anything, and I opened the door and I just saw things flying past the window at the door at gale force speed, and the trees bending over sideways and the rain blowing in that direction. I went, No, bugger this for a joke. I'm going back to bed. So I didn't get down to the island. Fortunately, I think.
Yes. It's been better. The weather's been better.
Yeah, well, we know how
Victoria.
bad it can get down there.
It's Victoria. If you don't like the weather, just wait 15 minutes.
Well, the last 2 days, I mean, I went for a walk this afternoon. The first time I've been for a walk for quite some time, and it was, I was out in the t-shirt, and it was about 17 or 18 degrees. It was fine. It was lovely. There was no problem. And apparently tomorrow's going to be like 18 or 19 degrees, and then on Saturday it's going to be 11 and pouring with rain.
So we've talked about the weather. We've talked about AFL. Shall we talk about some motor racing?
Well, we have. I mean, you got it late. I mean, so what's your take on Mr. Ricardo, the return of Mr. Ricardo?
Well, it's interesting because for those who follow Formula One on Twitter, and when I say Formula One, I mean all of the conspiracy theories and community-based chats. The spurious allegations and ideas that people had for which way different drivers were going to go during the summer break. I think certainly this is it's a shame for Nick De Vries, as you say, because he's come from that really well-credentialed background. But we've seen a lot of drivers come from very highly credentialed backgrounds in the past, made that step to Formula One, and for whatever reason, that step up is a bridge too far. I think only giving the driver, sort of 6 months or half a season to, get the go, no go, really, it's far more cutthroat now than it ever has been. I mean, the reason the Netflix series is called Drive to Survive is that every driver is always driving to maintain their position on the grid. Daniel is a driver of proven provenance. He put in that amazing performance at the Pirelli test. And the scuttlebutt that's on the internet indicates that, Nick was given even a longer opportunity to continue to prove himself in the AlphaTauri environment, particularly using the Red Bull simulator. And for whatever reason, whatever simulator targets were set, Daniel was able to meet them, but potentially not Nick. Again, this is all hearsay. There's no proof of this going around. I'm sure there'll be lots of flowery press releases, probably not from Helmut Marko. But as the group's already said, it would be very difficult, particularly for Liam Lawson, if he's seen what's happened to Nick De Vries already. And if we cast our minds back the last 10 years, this isn't the first time Red Bull's changed drivers, or a Red Bull team has changed drivers halfway through a season. We had Alex Albon, we've had Daniel Kvyat and Max Verstappen swap halfway through a season. This is not unprecedented. And certainly I would say Liam Lawson would want to step into a seat on merit, not because we've turfed the previous guy and, okay, now all that spotlight that's on that person is going to swivel to you. Longer term, I'd say we know that Red Bull is bringing their powertrain development in-house, and that powertrain is going to be branded by Ford. Yuki being Japanese, there's a lot of side promotional benefit for Honda in that. So the rumor swirling around, one of them is that at the end of Yuki's contract period, or at the end of the Honda period with AlphaTauri, or whatever it becomes known for the 2024 season, Honda will be partnering with whatever the team is known as, that is currently known as Aston Martin. Honda will be partnering with that team as a powertrain partner. You would work on the basis that a Japanese powertrain manufacturer would be heavily invested in ensuring a Japanese driver is maintained on the grid. So that, all these machinations, all of these, periphery negotiations on the business and the commercial side of Formula One, we only get to see the very tip of the iceberg take place when we see one driver move from team to team. So
it's going to be called Team Yuki. Yuki said that himself. Did you see that interview?
I didn't actually get to see a lot of the content come out in the last couple of days. In fact, I only managed to catch some of the Silverstone Grand Prix via KO Sport in the very dark and dangerous reaches of the Speed Cafe green room at the Mad Cow Tavern in Townsville late on Sunday night. Actually, I think it was very early Monday morning. There were a very large number of weary-eyed mechanics, motorsport professionals, and motorsport not-so-professionals at that point in that room. So thank you very much to Carl and the team from Speed Cafe for accommodating me and some of my friends there. That was a really great night. But what a great performance for Oscar Piastri. That's as far as the segue goes. I was hugely amazed by that performance, particularly the turnaround for McLaren in the last 2 or 3 races. I mean, that's a real story in and of itself.
Well, that was sort of going to be the main focus of our Formula One discussion tonight. Was the return of McLaren, and clearly the modifications they've made, at least at Silverstone, have made a huge change. I mean, Lando did very well, but Oscar really got caught behind the safety car, and that sort of possibly cost him a podium. So, Pete, what was your take on Piastri's weekend? It seemed to everything seemed to go very well.
It did, and I think it kind of vindicates Daniel in that it was the car and not him. So it kind of vindicates Daniel, and that will be interesting. Now that Daniel's driving the AlphaTauri, it'd be interesting the midfield battle between him and Oscar.
That's the subject.
And Yuki as well too. So it's going to be make or break. He's either going to come in with a glowing review and everyone will be vindicated, or he's going to fall flat on his face if it doesn't work out. So,
well, as you say, it's a challenge for Yuki as well, because Yuki, I mean, has been sort of obviously the head of that team in terms of performance, and now he's got the very experienced an 8-time Grand Prix winner alongside of him. If Daniel jumps in at the next round and actually starts, not just lapping and performing faster, going faster than Yuki, if he does it by any sort of margin, it's going to make Yuki look a bit second rate. So, he'll be hoping that once Daniel comes back and drives the AlphaTauri, that he might that he'll come back to the field a bit, and he will be back in the
the other thing is pack. Too, it could work out well for Yuki if he embraces it and with Daniel now on board and they collaborate. And Daniel's a nice guy. He's a well-known. He's an Australian. That we'll have 2 on the grid now, which is more than one. Which
bang goes the neighbourhood.
We were very lucky to have Mark and Daniel briefly together there for a while. However, if it could be beneficial for Yuki as well too, because the data and also Daniel's experience, if they share that, it could raise the whole team's profile in general on and off the track. And just something that's caught my eye. Have you got tyres in the background there, Richard? What have you got there over your left shoulder when you take it off mute? I can see. Have you got tyre warmers or just tyres?
No, they're just tyres. I store all my tyres in my office.
I just thought they'd exactly like the smell of burnt rubber in the morning when you wake up.
Yeah. Hey, I'm a racing car driver. Why wouldn't I? All my stuff is stored. All the suit and everything's all stored in here. Yeah.
Very good.
And that was the big news of the weekend, of course, was DNF to R. Outram at Phillip Island.
Yeah.
You got cleaned up.
Hold the papers.
So what happened? So what happened, Richard?
Oh, 2 guys came together, and one guy ended up in the middle of the track just past Siberia. And one guy went around the front of him to the left, and I thought, no, plenty of room at the back, rather than have a whole lot of people jump me. So I went round behind him, and he threw it into reverse gear just as I'm going past, and poleaxed the car, I'm afraid.
What? Where?
Oh, yes, straight into the side of it. And
is the chassis rail bent?
It'll need a bit of pulling. It just snapped the rear upright off, so that's a good hit.
It's going to need a jig for starters.
Yeah, well, it'll have to be checked on the jig for sure. But
sorry to hear that, mate.
So both cars had a bit of problem on the weekend. The second car, we were told that it was underweight with the driver. So around turn 3, it ended up in the mud, and it was so much mud in it. It's a wonder it must have been 20 or 30 kilos overweight by the time it got out.
Passed the scrutineering with that many miles in it as well. Too.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing those new tyres didn't get much use then.
No. At this
Well,
rate,
they're
with the
plainly,
new
you can
tyres
still see
coming,
the
I'll be
stickers
still
on them.
using them next year.
I hope that. Is there a jig close somewhere nearby? That,
I'm talking to Tim Rouse. He's very good. I've already
good.
been down to see him, and he's contacted his panel beater, and I'm waiting for the panel beater to get back to me. And
it's in waiting in line. That's good to hear.
Richard, it's interesting.
Hyundai Excel Racing, a birthday present. Every day is Christmas for panel beaters. Thanks for the Excel.
Dave?
I was going to ask Richard. It's interesting you mentioned tyres. Obviously, the situation with Hyundai Excels is that the tyre that they have been using for the past 5 or 6 years, the Falcon, I believe it is.
Federal.
Sorry, the Federal tyre. That's now been discontinued in that size, and there's a transition period to a new tyre that's going to be something else.
They believe they're testing the Dunlop at the moment, very similar to the T86 tyre.
Oh, it's like an ultra high performance road tyre, not a semi slick.
Yeah, it's central grooves, a few minor groovings on the outside, and they've already been testing that, and they can't pick a speed differential between either of them. The Federal and the Dunlop are almost identical.
But what about the cost?
I know nothing about the cost. That was the one question I should have asked, actually, but didn't. I should have asked that one. Yeah.
Plus inflation.
But anyway, so moving away from XLs and back to the world of Formula One for a brief moment.
Formula One XL,
No,
just
speed
important to
differential.
each other.
No, I mean we're on the same level. But Oscar Piastri, obviously a fantastic performance, and McLaren have already said that they're expecting they've got even more modifications, more improvements, or they believe they're improvements, hoping they're improvements on the way, and they're sort of saying that for the next round they think they should be even faster again, but it'll be the same scenario that Pete was talking about before. Lando will get all of the new parts, and Oscar will basically catch up to what the spec that Lando was in for this time. But the fact is that Lando still had some parts on his car that Oscar didn't, and Oscar was very competitive and in some cases quicker than Lando was. So that's a really good sign for Oscar.
Just waiting
Lewis
for.
Hamilton. Sorry,
I was about to say
Lewis-
just. There you go.
Lewis Hamilton was saying that he said that the McLarens are actually similar to the Red Bulls. He said they're scaringly similar to the Red Bulls at the moment.
Yeah, so it looks like they've made the improvements that they really needed. They've come on in leaps and bounds. So the second half of the year, I mean, we were sort of hoping that bit by bit teams would improve, and this looks like the biggest jump of all. But although it seems that everybody's improved, but it seems that Aston Martin has sort of gone a bit backwards, or everybody's improved and they've stayed where they were, because Fernando was not being the challenge that he has been that he was in the first couple of rounds, where you were saying, oh gee, hang on, Fernando could actually get up and win this, and he's been a bit off the pace just recently.
I was going to say, given that Mark Webber is Oscar Piastri's manager, might we see a return of that memorable catchphrase in post-race team radio, not bad for a number 2 driver?
Yes. Yes, I saw that just recently. They were pointing that out. And incidentally, if you want to see, because we don't actually have any cricket on tonight for a change, but I don't know if you've seen the Sky Formula One Ashes. Young Oscar doing very well on the cricket pitch as well, and led the Australians to victory in the Formula One Ashes. He was the only Australian actually playing, but that's okay, because he was the only one who needed to be playing, because Because the celebrity English are led by such luminaries as Lando Norris and Damon Hill, were all
He
out
looked a
for
bit
about
perplexed.
36.
He looked a bit perplexed there, Brett. He did it.
What was that?
He looked a bit perplexed. He looked a couple of shots there. Looked. I mean, he should be natural at it. And he loves his cricket, and
He played cricket at school.
Well, there's that famous shot was going around there of a very, very young, about sort of 7 or 8 year old kid gazing up admiringly at Ricky Ponting in the MCG members area, and that little 7-year-old was Oscar Piastri. So he's very much a cricket fan, and did play cricket at school level, and also some suburban stuff as well, and was apparently quite good. Certainly played some good shots in this. I mean, it was just a bit of hit and giggle and a bit of fun and all the rest of it. But he certainly played very well. But anyway, so Gary, Oscar, future world champion. Well, you'd have to say, I mean, if you go on his record in the past, he's won basically every damn category that he's ever entered, I think. So you'd have to say that it wouldn't be beyond the possibility, would it?
I liken his chances to. There's a really great quote from Doug Feehan, who was the program manager for Corvette racing at Pratt Miller for nearly, I think, over 20 years even, and he said the result is 25% good car, 25% good team, 25% good drivers, and 25% good luck. And I mean, Oscar can take care of 25% of that. The team can take care of 50%, and the other 25% is between him and whoever he bows down to and praise. So
he certainly should have the natural talent.
I think he's going to have a bit of competition though. You've got. I'm not saying it's going to obviously be detrimental being in a factory team like McLaren. If they've got if he's got the wheels underneath him, so to speak, without going into too much detrimental, he's got the car. But look, there's other potential out there that have been just around just as long, got enough experience, like Charles and Carlos and George. So you could probably throw half a dozen, maybe 8 in the mix that have all potential world champions, along with just as much as what Oscar's not saying.
Well,
I'm going to
Charles is having a bad run at the moment too. I mean, Ferrari have really, they're another team that have really disappointed this year, and Charles in particular, I think, really hasn't done particularly well. And there are rumblings that he's looking for some alternative somewhere, and certainly Alpine. Some people at the Renault side and the corporate side of Alpine are saying that Pierre Gasly, Charles Leclerc team would go down very, very well, or Esteban Ocon, one or the other. But they would certainly like Charles there. But whether he'd leave Ferrari, but he's not doing well at the moment.
Someone's I think Maybe there's a phone call coming from Carlos saying count me in the mix as well too there. Still, he's probably just going to have a chat to Mr. Saints on the side. Maybe Mr. Saints Senior maybe making the phone call and say, don't worry about my son as well. Thanks, Stilly. There's also George has been quoted recently as saying because he's been known as the Saturday special man. And he said, that's all well and good. Thank you for the compliment. I don't want to be known as the Saturday special. I don't want to Mr. Saturday. I want to be known as Mr. Sunday. So he's trying to aiming for more positive results on a Sunday. I don't think he's sort of too worried about Lewis to a certain extent. There, he knows he's cemented himself in his second season in the team now, and he knows he can be competitive in it, and he's proven that without actually making a hoo-ha about it. However, so George has done quite well, and that's there's the other rumours, Brett, as well too. Well, if Charles will go, well then they'll start swirling around Lewis too, because the contract hasn't been signed, sealed, and delivered yet. Just keeps going along like an old jalopy.
Yeah, I don't think Lewis is going anywhere. I can't see him. He's obviously not going to Red Bull. I mean, if Lewis turned up at Red Bull, then Max would walk. And I don't think they'd want that. And I don't know whether he'd fit in with some of Lewis's idiosyncrasies and stuff would go down particularly well with Helmut Marko.
Sign Lewis and say Max. Yeah, I know. You said Max would walk then. Well, would Helmut go in that direction in the first place?
Yeah, no, I don't think that's I don't think that's a goer. I think Lewis is going to stay at Mercedes. The only place I could possibly see Lewis going to would be Ferrari, just so he could have that opportunity to say that yes, I was a Ferrari Formula One driver. Because as I've said before, if you ask Alan Jones, that's the one thing he regrets was not when he had the opportunity to possibly go to Ferrari, he knocked them back, and he's regretted that ever since, because he said it would have been nice to have been able to say, yeah, I am. Oh yes, I not only did I used to race Formula One and was I a former Formula One world champion, but to be able to say, and I raced for Ferrari, that counts for something.
Oh. He would
that always works well on a Saturday night when you've been drinking with the bird up the bar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose Eddie Irvine made a career out of that, didn't he?
Yes, Eddie did well out of it, didn't he?
Yes.
So you were the first to react then, Richard. So I'm guessing you're the one that's you've used that line before.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it probably doesn't work. I raced for Ferrari.
Oh, I get it. All you do is get slapped.
Exactly. Incidentally, before we move on further with the motor racing, Mark, do we have a score update?
Well, it's half time right now, and I perhaps don't want to say what.
Okay. Oh. So your prediction is not looking good then.
Yeah, maybe I should change my
It's a lot lower third. Did I see Cameron Smith on the news tonight saying how hard it is to win a game alone? And he was really playing things down. Fortunately, he has. I think, maybe.
Well, it is a dead rubber. I mean, Queensland have wrapped it up already, I believe. So it is a three round thing, isn't it?
You have got the question mark behind Mark. You've covered your butt there. Yep.
Yeah.
They're heading out for the second half now. I think it was last time I glanced. I think it's at 18.6.
Yeah, they're coming through the race now. I've got it on the screen as well too in the background, Mark. So the Maroons are running through the screen there with all the special sponsorship of Ampol, etc. along the way. Good to see Ampol not just sponsor cars and motor racing.
So there we are. So that's an interesting box to say. Will Ricciardo coming back destroy the chances of Doohan moving up? I don't think that at the moment, unless he has some big improvements, I don't think it's going to be Ricciardo that gets in his road, because he hasn't set the world on fire so far this year. He did better at Silverstone, but. He's seemingly out of contention at the moment for the championship, and certainly he's got the backing. He's an Alpine junior development driver, so whether you would imagine that their preference has always been to try and get French guys through, and I think they've got a couple of young French drivers coming through. Who's Théo Pourchaire? Where's he based? Is he a Williams?
I can't remember the connection on that one. You're right.
I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know.
I'll have a quick look. I'll have a look now.
Yeah, I think he was a Williams junior development driver, but I think obviously that I imagine that they would be very keen to get hold of a French driver before they'd get Jack in, if Jack doesn't come up and do better.
Sauber.
Okay.
Did you say Sauber, Mark?
Yeah, so that's interesting. Speaking of
slash Alfa Romeo Junior, so yeah,
soon to be Audi, which is an announcement that was made yesterday. Is that Audi pretty much sort of announcing that they're not getting out of the the sports cars and TCR and that sort of thing. But they've sort of said that anybody who's bought a car now or has a car, so and the teams that are running like Melbourne Performance Centre and all the rest of it, they will continue to support them with upgrades and with spare parts and all the rest of it, but they're not going to develop any new cars, and they're also going to remove all of those teams, those drivers that we've seen, come over here for the Bathurst 12 Hour and race into DTM and all that. So there'll be no factory support for those big races and for things like the DTM and touring and TCR World Tour and that sort of thing. So yeah, they've just basically said we're all in on Formula One now. That's where our focus is as far as motorsport goes for the foreseeable future, and all of our resources are going into that. So yes, that's a shame.
Turnaround from when Audi, the reason behind Audi being such a stalwart at Le Mans for so many years was that they could get as much publicity from that one race compared to what they could get from a whole season of mid to back F1. So it's that argument's come full circle.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it is because Dr. Wolfgang Ulrich, was very much behind that in terms of, he was saying that, in terms of the money that you would spend to get into Formula One compared with the money that they spent to win Le Mans time and time and time again, he said the amount of publicity we get, and also the fact that he said there was more flexibility within sports car regulations, which allowed them to bring in things like the diesel Audi and the hybrids and all those sorts of things. They had more flexibility than they did in Formula One. So it's interesting now that with Dr. Ulrich gone, I think that the marketeers have taken over, and all they can see is Formula One, Formula One, Formula One.
But by the same token, the financial equation in Formula One has changed dramatically in the last few years. So consider the recent announcement that there's, Maximum Effort Capital, headed up by Ryan Reynolds and his partner in the Wrexham Football Club venture, along with a number of other celebrities. They've bought a 24% stake in Alpine that is, whatever that's valued at, values the Alpine operation at near to $1 billion, when you could have bought a Formula One team comfortably, 6, 7, 8 years ago for well less than a quarter of that.
It was a bargain. I don't know why I didn't jump in at the time.
with the cost cap, now being brought in, the facilities that are available at Hinwil in Switzerland for the Sauber team, and the massive growth of Formula One since Liberty took over, and the loosening of the restrictions on how you can create content, how you can use the content, and the exposure that it gets worldwide, the value equation for an entity being involved in Formula One has changed massively. Hence the reason why you've got Andretti and GM beating down the doors trying to start an 11th team. It's why
Really?
the team, absolutely.
They are they?
Yeah, so the FIA closed
for a little while. That's all.
The FIA was accepting applications to join the World Championship up until, I think, the end of June. I believe there's 2 or 3 that are going through to the next stage, and you'd have to wager that the Andretti GM one is the most serious at this stage.
It's still going through, still, is it? That's right.
As we understand. Yeah. Obviously, there's other stuff to the Formula One side and Liberty and the dilution fee, because it is slicing up the revenue pie, by 1 or 2 more pieces. But if the pie is bigger as a result, who really cares? But everyone was desperate for there to be more teams 10 years ago, and we had all these minnows come in, like Caterham and HRT and Manor, that were under-resourced, that were expecting there to be a budget cap, and there wasn't, and they all vanished into thin air. Whereas now we've got, properly resourced organisations wanting to come back in, and the legacy teams are like, maybe not now. So on to finish off on the Audi story, this is kind of a confluence of events. We've got a change of management on the Audi board. you've got the end of diesel supremacy in hypercar regulations, and obviously, particularly post Dieselgate, there's not a whole lot of technology transfer benefit around advertising diesel technology anymore. They've already pulled out of Formula E. The R8, the car that you're basing it on. So what's the point of GT racing? Is it's this halo show car, the pace car for the entire company, so to speak. The R8's going out of production. It's not scheduled for a replacement. So that's gone. That underpins their GT3, GT2, and GT4 efforts. The Audi RS3 TCR car has always been a pure customer racing series. It's specifically not allowed to have factory teams in any TCR series. So that makes sense from the outset. There is scope. There is scope. So all the TCR cars, the Volkswagen Golfs when they were being made, and the Audis, they're all made by Seat or Cupra anyway, by Cupra Sport, because all underneath they're based off the Seat Cupra chassis and the Cupra development as well. And that, of course, the Seat Leon Cupra Super Cup car was the basis for the TCR regs, 10 years ago anyway. There is still a window open that if you consider what BMW's changed over in their GTE lineup, they've gone from the Z4 to the M6, the M8 in GTE racing. They've now gone to the M4. The M4 is their platform for GT3 and GT4 racing. Audi has the S5 and the RS5, similarly sized cars that will maintain having reasonably high performance internal combustion engines for the foreseeable future. The chances are Audi may have scope to continue in customer racing in GT, be it GT4 or GT3, albeit with a different car. It's not going to be the R8, which is a shame because it's been the most populous and most popular from a customer racing perspective GT3 car ever since it launched back in 2008, 2009.
All good things must come to an end sometime.
Exactly. The star that burns twice as bright only burns for half as long.
Oh, we've got to write that down. That's a T-shirt.
That's been a bullet in the gun for a while. That one. There's a round and a half. That hasn't misfired at all.
And Audi, and a race car on track's worth 2 in the pits.
Yes. By the way, Jeremy,
sure. You got that one. You got leave it. The first one. That's all right. That's good.
Jeremy's just saying about Liam Lawson. We spoke about Liam Lawson. So, do you think the idea at the moment would possibly be Lawson to go for Daniel because he's on loan, for Daniel to see out the year with AlphaTauri, and then for him to step aside and either move into Sergio's position or possibly go to another team because this is an audition for him and something might open up. So either he goes to Red Bull to replace Sergio, or he goes somewhere else along the way, and then Liam would
jumps in,
would eventually jump in, because that would make a lot more sense. Especially, also they're going to get the opportunity now with Liam. As I said in the article on the Facebook page, they've got the article now to see how he performs under the pressure of being in contention for what is a major championship and a very competitive championship in Super Formula. And if you haven't seen Super Formula, most of their races are live on YouTube, and it's great racing. They're essentially, it's a little bit in some ways like S5000. The main difference is the cars have got an awful lot more downforce. They're lighter. They've got more power. They basically sort of control open wheelers powered by the same engines that power the Super GT cars. So most
they use they use the Dallara tub from IndyCar, don't they?
Yeah. I'm not sure what ones they're using now. I think it is the Dallara. I think pretty much everything runs. It's either a Dallara
or an Oreca
or an Oreca. So I think that's the. I think that's the thing that they've sort of wrapped up the world of motorsport in terms of constructing race cars, because even the NASCARs, I mean, have got Dallara bits and pieces involved apparently. So
isn't State of Origin more interesting when the scores are closer, Mark? Sorry, I'm just getting distracted by the game here in the side.
I had to peer over the top. You mentioned it, and I had to peer over the top and have a look at the
It's
score.
more interesting
Sure
when the
enough, the good
scores are
guys are
this
coming
close,
back.
even if it is a dead rubber. That's all right. It's just a lot more interesting. That's all.
well, we will get people back to the those who are interested. We'll get to say that. No, Jeremy, no, we haven't seen that. I'll need to search for that.
Yeah, we didn't. So we haven't caught up with that last week. We haven't seen the comedy reels in the last week. Any of us by the sounding. So apology, Jeremy. Please, remind us. Get on
I take it it's on YouTube or somewhere, because that would be the. But if not, if you've got a link, Jeremy, pop it up and we'll
give us the link, or
we'll see it, or we'll track it down later in
a little bit of forward thinking there, Jeremy. When Brett posts up the link next week for the streaming of our full course yellow for the show we're doing now for a week's time, when he puts it up, if you jump on early, Jeremy, put the link up as a post in the comments section, so we can watch it leading up to next week's show, and everyone else can also have a watch of it as well too and comment as part of our viewership.
Because I think the thing that like he's obviously got a much higher profile in New Zealand than he has over here. I mean, he'd be fairly anonymous, here in Australia, but like clearly he's doing really well in Super Formula, and he hasn't put a foot wrong in pretty much anything that he's done. So he's always been very competitive. So
I briefly brushed shoulders with him when I was at the Bathurst 12 Hour earlier this year. I'm not sure if anyone else can comment there. Please put in your comments.
I didn't know it was at Bathurst.
Yeah, he was at the Bathurst 12 Hour because you remember the Red Bull came over for the demonstration.
Oh, of course, yes.
And I was able to access the pit area as well too with my accreditation, proudly given to us by In Pit Lane and organised by Brett. So thank you. And
ultimately given to us by the organisers of the Bathurst 12 Hours and Richard Crail. So thank you, Richard.
Thank you very much, Richard, above all else.
And we will be putting our hand out again, because I've already got accommodation booked this year, and I'm come hell or high water, I'm coming back.
That's it. Yeah, as well, you went last year technically as well too, Brett. We won't get into that fiasco right now. However,
yes, I was there in. I had an avatar.
That's all right, and a very good a very handy avatar you were as well too. So anyway, cut the long story short. Anyway, I was obviously in the garage, in the pit garage, behind the public walls as well too, where they have the what do you call them, those half fencing as well though too, to keep the natives back and keep them all in perspective so they can all get a good view of the car. And when I was just in the vicinity of Liam, he was very very well spoken and respectful, and it seemed like a great guy, or a kid to us at our age, I suppose. But yeah, he was a hell of a fellow, and very responsive. He did seem a little busy at the time, but I think everyone wanted, because obviously he doesn't spend much time in Australia, let alone with his calendar and his racing interests as well too around the world. So he doesn't have a lot of time, so a lot of people wanted 5 cents with him. So I don't know him personally, but he was very friendly towards everyone and very giving of his time when he was there. So hello, Liam, down the track, if you're ever tuning into Full Course Yellow and making it one of your staple shows. Thanks, and hopefully see you back at the Bathurst 12 Hour if you get time in the future.
Yes, so let's move on to local racing now. And Stilly was up there. We had a Mustang 1 on. That was the headline. The Mustang 1, but was it the miracle of parity, or was it just good luck because he had better tyres? He had a spare set of tyres that got him to the victory line first.
Look, it's very difficult to answer this question with regards to parity, because everyone has a point of view which essentially, as far as they're concerned and the data that they have presented to them, may be correct. To catch people up, obviously we reached the parity review trigger point in Darwin. The supercars went away with both homologation teams, Dick Johnson Racing and 888's Red Bull Ampol Racing. They did some back-to-back testing. They did some CFD testing using the services of a CFD company in the UK that's been heavily involved in the development of the Gen 3 cars. The resulting adjustment was a slightly different change to the spoiler. So that's the actual bit bolted to the boot lid at boot lid level. And then a repositioning of the wing. So it went 25 millimeters lower and 25 millimeters forward, which if you think about it, usually to get more downforce on a wing, you move it rearwards and upwards. So that's quite interesting. So it just obviously depends how the airflow is going across the rear window and boot lid of the Mustang. The difference is that the Ford teams have spent so much time throughout the season engineering their cars to try to stop them burning the rear tire off because they feel they don't have as much downforce on the rear under braking and on corner entry. The difficulty is that all of that learning, when you move the rear wing around and you change the downforce levels at different speeds, you move the center of pressure up and down the car. So all of the mechanical engineering you've done to try to get the tire to do a certain thing at a certain point of the corner, all of that goes out the window. So while this might be an excellent starting point to have been at the start of the year before testing, it isn't a setup that they worked with.
Breaking news. This is breaking
Travis
news.
Auld.
12 seconds ago, exactly.
Travis Auld, yeah.
Travis Auld has just been named CEO of the Australian Grand Prix Corporation. It's succeeding Andrew Westacott. There you go. You saw the same.
Wow, you heard it first here.
Sorry, silly. But yeah, we're on air as it's been breaking.
There we go. Say a reasonably safe pair of hands, but obviously very big shoes to fill.
Yeah, Auld is stepped down to his official position with the AFL, what's called Chief Financial Officer. And he'll step down from early next month, taking up the new role on August 14th with the Australian Grand Prix Corporation. There you go.
He'll have a couple of months run in, and then of course gets to kick off with MotoGP at Phillip Island late in October.
Of course, he won't be officially sort of, like his real baptism of fire will be sometime in sort of, like probably just after the MotoGP when he does his first appearance on In Pit Lane on Channel 31 Thursday night because that's been the tradition. We've had them all on from the days of Judas Griggs all the way through to Andrew.
So, we've
had them all on. So Travis,
we'll be grilling you.
You'll be hearing from us.
I was going to say, bring your own barbecue. Bring a Weber mini Q in or something like that. We'll look.
Bring the George Foreman grill and grill.
Let's get the plugs in. So speaking of a baptism of fire, so while the Dick Johnson Racing team had a chance to test these back to back with Red Bull Ampol Racing and try to figure out whether it was moving the center of pressure and the downforce levels in the right direction, all the other teams were basically coming into this race meeting blind from a setup perspective, and they only got 2 30-minute practice sessions on Friday to try to figure it out before they went straight into qualifying on Saturday morning. So not a huge amount of time to learn, and on a circuit that evolves massively from those first laps that the support categories do on the Friday morning, right through to when you actually start paying points on the Saturday afternoon in the first of the 250-kilometre races. The circuit evolution is so massive that what you try and learn at the start of practice one early on Friday, there's no relevance to how the car handles when it's actually in a race. When you're in the dirty air tucked up behind another car, when you've got someone tucked up behind you taking away the air off the rear of your car. So we don't yet have enough data to say, has this adjustment that's been provided to the Mustangs given them everything that they've needed? Because they haven't been to a track. Now, of course, their next step on the calendar, I believe, is Sydney Motorsport Park, which is a circuit that's will far more demonstrate any sort of aero disparity in the cars, particularly because the surface is a lot more consistent. But from that perspective, Sydney Motorsport Park is quite hard on tyres as well. Similar sorts of aero loads to Phillip Island in terms of the elevation change and the constant radius of nature of the corners. But the surface quality, there's about half the circuit is very high grade hot mix. The other half is very vintage hot mix, from the 90s. And it does act a little bit like a cheese grater. I know that feeling from wheeling a fairly hefty Mustang with big wings around the circuit myself. You jump in the car at the start of a stint of a 60-minute race with fresh tyres on, and everything's great. And then you hand over to your co-driver at the halfway point, and they think they're driving a car that's on cheese. So I think we need to wait for Sydney Motorsport Park to tell, has this made an adjustment, and has it made enough of an adjustment? But interesting comments came from Ryan Walkinshaw, both on Twitter and in other forums post the event, quite rightly pointing out that the main reason Anton won that race is he had a shocker on Saturday, had far more green tyres in his tyre bank for Sunday, absolutely dominated that second stint when he pitted very early, about lap 15, lap 16, and then brained them on fresh tyres when he had clear air. And then, of course, when that safety car came out around about lap 30, everyone had to pit. He reset. He got to bolt new tyres on again and race through the field. So by the time he got to that final stop, still had at least 2, possibly more brand new tyres to throw on at the end, had great tyre quality throughout. But you could see that the gaps were dropping and dropping and dropping to the point where he had something like an 11 or 12 second gap in that final stint, and it just started shrinking away. Now, the racer in me is going, he's probably on the phone with Ludo going, just drive it to the number, don't blow the tyres off the thing. We've got 10 or 11 seconds to go, and we've got 15 laps. If you lose half a second a lap, it's not going to hurt us, over the course of the stint. The bigger thing for me was that challenging communication between the two Red Bull Ampol Racing teammates. Yes. Certainly, that will make the debrief in Banyo a little bit challenging, I'm sure.
But also,
so to sum it up, he had a lot of press to pass on his remote control, a lot more than the other ones. Well, called tyres.
Yeah.
Also, there are a lot of power steering and steering issues for them all, and it was particularly interesting that Chaz Mostert, when his power steering failed on the Sunday, he said it's another control component that's failed.
Yeah.
Savage,
so this is kind of harking back to in the previous generation of car, there was a lot more scope for development. So while the aero package was set by the manufacturer, the teams had a lot of scope to develop. So if they were lacking front grip or rear grip, or they're lacking steering feel, there was a huge scope to develop things the way they wanted to try to achieve their aims. Now, there's no right way or wrong way to build a car under the previous regulations, but there were decisions and there were consequences. So you could design a steering rack that was really lightweight, that had super fast steering ratio in it, but you could take it to a track like Townsville, the Gold Coast, and you show it a curb 4 or 5 times, and you end up with the thing bent like a banana. Conversely, you could go the other end of the spectrum, and you could build a super rugged, heavy-duty rack that survives smashing curb, day after day after day, but it might not have the feel and the precision, and it would also be a lot heavier, and increasing that front axle weight. So there's no right or wrong decision at that point. All of those decisions have consequences. With the advent of Gen 3, all of that decision making in terms of how do we optimize our car for certain circuits, the number of tools in the toolbox and the size of the toolbox you've got to work in has shrunk massively. So one of the things that, Walkinshaw was renowned for their prowess on street circuits. Not so good on the circuits that had long flowing constant radius corners, like not so great at Phillip Island or the Bend or Sydney Motorsport Park. But, Adelaide, demons on the street, the Gold Coast, Townsville, Homebush, they were always very, very good at those 90-degree, lots of squat, lots of power down, in terms of the way that they tune the engines, in terms of what they want the throttle profile to be like, coming on and off the corner. All of those tools are gone. So when a component that you have no control over, it's like the category says, this is the steering rack, this is what it is, use it. When one of those fails, understandably, you could say, it's something that we no longer have any control over and it's ruined my weekend. You can absolutely empathize with where Chaz is coming from. Certainly there's been murmurings from a number of the teams that, perhaps the decision-making chart or what they weighed up in their pros and cons and the outcomes of their decisions they'll probably be reevaluating those. The problem is it's not just a case of just take the steering rack out and put a different one in. Everything is all about it being a holistic package. So if you want to make a change to the steering rack, that will undoubtedly have impacts on the front subframe area, may have impacts on the way the dry sump is configured, may have implications on the way the control arms and the track rod ends work, the way the controls, because the steering column no longer just goes down from the firewall straight to the rack. It actually feeds out and around, down through past one of the suspension towers down into the steering rack. That being said, Chaz did also clip the wall fairly hard in the top 10 shootout. So I don't know whether I wasn't across whether the team changed the rack between the shootout and the race.
They do seem to be a lot more fragile at the moment, these Gen 3 cars. I mean, and that was one of the things that that Shane was saying about NASCAR was, in fact, he said a couple of times. He said there were a couple of bumps that that people took. I think in all of the crashes that they had on the streets of Chicago, they ended up only one car actually failed to finish, and there was some quite big sort of bumps going on there. But they got them back they managed to get them back into pit lane, and they managed to repair them, and all but one of them managed to get home. So that certainly impressed us. Certainly impressed Shane.
Yeah, that was in Ingles.
I was just going to say, in Dave, later was a report that it was the cooler to the power steering which had developed a leak, not actually the power steering. That's what I heard.
Again, another controlled component. There were murmurings coming from the Blanchard racing team as well about what might have been a control component failure on Todd Hazelwood's car and taken them out of Sunday's race. We've seen a number of even in the Gen 2 era, we saw a number of teams struggling with power steering. Team 18 went through 2 or 3 years, I think, of continual issues with racks, with coolers, with pumps, with hoses. Even remembering back to the Volvo days, they had trouble keeping power steering line fittings from shattering based on the harmonics of the Volvo engine. So admittedly, we're still only 6 months into the actual hardcore wheel-to-wheel testing schedule of the Gen 3 car. All the testing that was done previously, they never, think back to Newcastle, the drivers were instructed really hard, like, these are the only cars we have. Do not fence them.
Do not bend them.
Do not push the boundaries. We're now into the point. We don't have spare parts. We're now into the point of the season where they do have spare parts, and they do have spare corners and bars and control arms and steering racks.
Still limited.
Correct. But the teams are willing to push harder and harder to try to get a result. And that then has consequences. Again, no right or wrong, no ultimately right or wrong decisions, but there are consequences.
Just on that point, Stilly, that I just thought about it as well too, on the spare parts and the cars, etc., like that. When they put in the last round before up at Darwin, they put what's his name's the Monster Mustang back together again. They had to borrow spare parts from the other teams to get them back on the road, which all teams have always been like one big happy family and generously helped each other out whenever possible. So that was Cam Waters' car was bolted together just with other teams' parts as well too to get it back on the road the following day.
But therein lies one of the advantages of Gen 3 is that there is unanimity between all the Ford cars are effectively the same, with the exception of how they set them up, and all the Camaros are the same, depending upon how they set them up. So this reduces the spare parts component that each team has to try to carry individually because, Tickford would build their front bumper beam one way and Walkinshaw would build it another way and, DJR would build it one way and they'd have one roll bar system and then all of that's all the same. The idea is that this goes more to like a GT3 style or a Carrera Cup style of support package where there's a much larger concentration of a communal spares kit so that the teams don't have to invest so much in having parts and parts and parts, gathering dust in the truck or in the shelves back at the workshop.
Yeah, it certainly makes it.
I was just going to say, it makes a big advantage if you want to have a flyaway competition and spread your V8 supercars around the world.
And therein lies a great segue to the other discussion going on this week, which are the rumours swirling around that Supercars wants to buy back 2 teams racing entitlements,
a week ago, yeah.
and then
we
sell
covered it
one
last week,
and then sell one to Blanchard. So
and then because the 24
we're
fits.
already an hour and 10 minutes in, so maybe that will breeze it.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good time to wrap things up. We did have so much to talk about. Very quickly,
MotoGP news, not breaking, but it's building. Back on July 7th. I don't know if there's anything in this, but maybe actually eventuates more come out of it. Marc Marquez put his Repsol Honda motorhome for sale up on the market, on the public market to buy. So that was nothing new in that. They do it all the time. They upgrade them, they change them, whatever it may be. They have different priorities in their life, all the way they're going to stay at particular places. And we'll quickly jump onto Nagas. However, there's been a recent social media post in the last couple of days with, and it could lead to a little bit more, but with Rafa Nadal from the tennis world, obviously he's in the injury worries at the moment and didn't compete at Wimbledon, happened to say he might let the cat out of the bag. Good luck in your future endeavours on your new, whatever it may be, endeavours in your new career or whatever ventures. So there's been talk of Marc Marquez leaving Repsol Honda. Maybe he might be heading over to the KTM team, and if he does, is Jack still going to be there? Is Brad Binder still going to be riding there? Who knows? So
certainly KTM actually come out today and said that Brad and they said, in terms of the silly season, they said there's nothing as far as they're concerned, there's nothing to look at here. They said we are set for next year, and Brad and Jack are our riders, and that's the end of discussion. So they're certainly backing them at the moment. Hey, listen, we will have to
one last thing.
Yes, very quickly.
Yeah, Valentino Rossi also says come out. There's a good article on one of our media outlets as well to our partner, the ones that we get information from respected Crash.net. Valentino has a good article at the moment on when he decided he gave up his career as well too, with stuff like that. And yeah, it is a bit of an off season as far as MotoGP at the moment. We'll have more in the next few weeks because let it go back to Silverstone on the 6th of next month. There you go.
Okay. So, and do we have a final score yet, Mark?
No, we do not.
22 to 10. 22 to 10.
There's still about quarter an hour of the game left. So.
Community service announcement: 22 to 10. We thought the Blues had a goal a couple of minutes ago. It got reneged, didn't I think, Mark? And now they've just actually got a try and they're getting put between the posts. So they'll be up to 24.
See, we've got you covered for everything, even the rugby league. We've got that covered as well. Eliza said it's those two State of Origins and one Melbourne Storm games, and they're sort of 4 hours of my life I will never ever get back. Okay,
don't disrespect the great game of rugby league.
Rugby league.
Rugby league.
And with that, in the spirit of Roy and HG, we will say happy rugby league to all of you, and we will see you. We will see you next week. Superbikes at Morgan Park this weekend in Queensland. So if you're up there, you heading out there, Mark?
No, I'll be at historic Queensland at Queensland Raceway.
Oh yes, and they've got. So I think the historic sports sedans out there.
They should be.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a good.
It's like talk. It's like around the grounds when we get to talk to Mark at the end and what's going up in Queensland. It's
the only play. I mean, let's face it. There's nothing really happening down here right now. Although there is stuff coming up in the next few weeks.
I like the Mark. You got around the grounds before we leave you every week. How's that sound?
Around the grounds with mothers.
They're leaving us now.
They are leaving us. Everybody's going. Everyone said we've had enough.
Can I put one in before we go? I'll actually be in Sydney alongside some members of the motorsport media community, bringing you the Pitcher Partners Sydney 300 as part of the MRA Round 2 at Sydney Motorsport Park this weekend. Coverage live and free from 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Blendline TV.
Well, there you go. So that's coming. So where's that from? That's from Sydney Motorsport Park, is it?
Sydney Motorsport Park. So the Sydney 300. So one of the AASA 300-kilometre endurance races, like we're used to the Winton and Wakefield 300s. Right. This is also run with the same regulations. So
what sort of field have they got? Because it was very
Maroons just got a try. There you go.
Entry Entry list approaching 70 cars for this one. So a massive field of cars at Sydney Motorsport Park, under lights too. So that the investment of the New South Wales government.
That's Saturday. So it's happening Saturday. Is it Saturday?
Saturday. So coverage from 10 a.m. Eastern on YouTube.
You want to keep going, Mark, or they might score more?
Yeah, look, let's let Mark anyway and watch everyone. Roy has just joined us. I mean, Roy's having as much trouble with these early nights as I am, I think.
Oh, I've been up since 5 a.m. I'm having trouble staying awake. Did you deliberately throw me back off Stilly before it gets me morning? Yeah.
No, I just clicked on just as you were. No, that's not a bad thing. Hey, listen, incidentally, tomorrow night in Pit Lane, 9 o'clock, Channel 31, first of a two-part special edition with legendary Australian motorsport photographer Ian Smith. Shows us some of his famous photos, tells us some of the stories behind the people involved.
Come on, Brett, hang us one more. Give us a little grab from it. Come on, just a little teaser.
Great thing. Well, you'll hear all about people like Norm Beachy and Alan Moffat. Bob Jane, of course, had a very close relationship over the years with Bob, and of course took the famous photo that is still used today, the logo for Bob Jane Team Arts. That shot of Bob, and he shows us the original of that, and just how much he actually got paid for that very famous
like everyone else got paid from Bob.
Well, it wasn't from Bob. But it was.
Hang on, I'm just digging through my IOUs here now.
Just quickly, one thing that I will say: if you're interested in the Thunderdome, the future of the Thunderdome, and all the stories that have been around the Thunderdome and all that, make sure you watch tomorrow night, because there is something that comes out of that tomorrow night which is very interesting. So it's tomorrow night, 9 o'clock on In Pit Lane. Okay, we got to get out of here, everybody. Otherwise, we'll be here until 3 a.m. Catch you later, everyone. Good night, everyone. See you next week. Bye.
Have a great weekend.